Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new video. Now in this one, I'm going to be discussing as well as showcasing the ultimate long range loadout for one of the best assault rifles in the game for medium to longer range engagements, and that is of course the EM2. Now let me just say, if you guys haven't used the EM2 recently, you're definitely missing out because this thing is an absolute monster, especially at those medium to longer range engagements, and that's the comment I want to make today's video. Now, interestingly enough, the gameplay that you guys are going to be watching in this one is a couple wins that I got while using this particular assault rifle. And let me just say, this weapon, it's a lot of fun to use, it's extremely powerful, and in this video I am going to be showcasing the ultimate loadout for it. So with that said, if you guys go on to enjoy this one, make sure you leave a like on it down below, as well as subscribe and turn on post notifications so that way you guys will not miss any of the latest and greatest Call of Duty news, class slips, and all kinds of things like that. Of course, Call of Duty Vanguard is going to be releasing next Friday, so make sure you guys stay tuned to the channel because once Vanguard releases, I'm going to be releasing a lot of new content. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive right into it. And alright guys, so of course to start off today's video, I want to talk a little bit about the EM2 assault rifle, some of its attributes, how you can unlock it, and then a little bit later I'm going to be segueing into the actual class stuff. So with that said, let's actually talk about the EM2. Now if you guys weren't already aware, the EM2 was added into the game with Black Ops Cold War Season 5, as you originally were able to unlock this DLC weapon at tier 31 of the Season 5 Battle Pass. And of course, here in Black Ops Cold War as well as Warzone Season 6, you can still unlock this particular DLC weapon. Now, instead of unlocking it in the Battle Pass, you can unlock it via completing a rather simple challenge. And yeah, with that said, now let's actually talk about attributes. And let me just say, the EM2 is a very dominant long-range assault rifle, and in the current state of Warzone, I would say that it is actually the best medium to long-range assault rifle. The EM2 naturally has a slow fire rate, high damage, and low recoil, kind of making it like the SCAR from Modern Warfare 2 or Black Ops 2. And actually, the more that I use the EM2, the more that it reminded me of those weapons. And actually, if you guys played Black Ops 3, in some regards, the EM2 is actually a bit like the Man of War, so if you guys ever played Black Ops 3, you'll kind of have an idea how this weapon will be performing. And with that in mind, the EM2 is very versatile, as although it excels at those medium to longer range engagements, if you can hit your shots at close range, you're going to be absolutely dropping opponents. However, the main downside of using this particular weapon at close range is its fire rate. It's pretty slow, and you have to make sure to hit your shots if you want any hope of taking down an opponent at close range. And that's because it's excellently paired with an overkill submachine gun, more specifically either the Modern Warfare MP5 or the Cold War MAC-10, which in the gameplays that you guys are going to be seeing in today's video, for my secondary weapon I use either the Modern Warfare MP5 or the Cold War MAC-10, and that's how come I just mentioned them. And honestly, it's a really good pairing because, as you guys are going to be seeing in the gameplay, I'm able to absolutely laser opponents at medium to longer range with the EM2, and then if I get into those close range engagements, I can pull out my submachine gun, take out those opponents, and then finish them off with a throwing knife. So overall, this class setup is very versatile, and actually to a certain extent, the EM2 is kind of like a marksman rifle, as you can actually get kills at marksman rifle and sniper rifle ranges while using the EM2 because of its high damage and low recoil, which means that you can actually tap the trigger a little bit and shoot out just a couple rounds, and if you're able to hit your shots, at the very least you're going to be cracking their armor, and at the very most you are going to be downing them and possibly finishing them. So now that we got the introduction to this weapon out of the way, let's actually move over to the class setup, or more specifically the loadout here in Warzone. So breaking it down a little bit, of course my primary weapon, I am going to be using the EM2. I'm also going to be using the Geomatic blueprint for it. With that in mind, let's move on down and talk about my secondary weapon, which of course is going to be the Modern Warfare MP5. Personally, I prefer the Modern Warfare MP5 to the MAC-10, however, that's just my own personal preference. With that in mind, let's move on down to the perk sub, in which I am going to be using double time, overkill, as well as battle hardened. Lethal is pretty standard, of course I am going to be using the throwing knife, however, if you guys would like to swap that out to something like the Semtex grenade, feel free to go ahead and do so. With that in mind, moving on down to my tactical, I will be using the heartbeat sensor because I prefer using the heartbeat sensor over spamming stun grenades. So yeah, with that in mind, let's actually break down the attachments, which I'm going to be briefly going over them if you just want to know the attachments I am going to be using, and then a little bit later I'm going to be breaking it down a little bit and talking about the attributes. So talking about the attachments, I will be using the agency suppressor, the 25.8-inch task force barrel, the Axle Arms 3x optic, the field agent grip, as well as the 40 R&D magazine. And alright, so now let's break down these attachments. Of course, the agency suppressor will be increasing the sound suppression, the vertical recoil control, the bullet velocity, as well as the effective damage range, and actually all of those things are good things. Of course, sound suppression is very good as we are going to be staying off the radar. Vertical recoil control is very good because even though this weapon doesn't really have much vertical recoil, reducing it even more so is just going to be turning this thing into an absolute laser beam. Additionally, the bullet velocity as well as effective damage range is going to make this weapon weapon a little bit more effective at those medium to longer range engagements, and quite frankly, this attachment just emphasizes the pros of this particular weapon. With that in mind, talking a little bit about the Task Force barrel, it of course will be increasing the bullet velocity, the horizontal recoil control, the effective damage range, as well as the vertical recoil control, and of course everything that I just mentioned about the suppressor stays true with this particular attachment. So with that in mind, now let's move on over to our third attachment, which of course is the Axle Arms 3x optic. Now, honestly, the iron sights on this particular weapon aren't necessarily that bad. However, if you put on the Axle Arms 3x optic, it's going to allow you to be way more precise at those medium to longer range engagements, which of course is extremely beneficial when you're using the EM2. So with that in mind, now let's actually talk about the magazine, in which I will be using the 40 R&D, which of course will be bumping up the magazine size of this particular weapon from 30 rounds to 40 rounds, and there's a reason why I chose this particular attachment. Of course, with the EM2, you can use something like a 50 round magazine or 45 round magazine. However, the problem with those particular attachments is they reduce your aim down sight speed as well as your movement speed, whereas with the 40 R&D magazine, it's just going to be reducing your reload quickness and it's not going to be affecting anything else. And honestly, 40 rounds is more than enough for the EM2. Of course, as I just mentioned a little bit earlier in this video, the EM2 has a very slow and consistent fire rate, so you don't need to have 60 or 70 rounds to take out multiple opponents. 40 will do you very well, and with 40, you can probably take out an entire squad without having to worry about reloading. So with that in mind, now let's actually move over to our final attachment, which is going to be the Field Agent Grip, which will be increasing the horizontal recoil control as well as the vertical recoil control. Of course, the Field Agent Grip is a very classic and straightforward grip. There's nothing really too fancy about that. It's just going to make this weapon more accurate, and that's very useful. So that's how I am going to be using it. And yeah, guys, that's of course the class up portion of today's video, and with that in mind, that's going to effectively wrap up this one. I hope you went on to enjoy it, and if you did, do not forget to leave a like on this video, as well as subscribe and turn on post notifications, so that way you guys will not miss any of the latest and greatest Call of Duty news, class slips, and all kinds of things like that. So thank you once again for watching. I've been your host, Deeper Jungle, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Thank you.